Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode where we are going to talk all about triathlon. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by James Bale. Jimbo, how you going, mate?
I'm doing really well, mate. I like the trend that's happening at the moment where you do the interviews and I don't have to do much at all. I just turn up for a 5-10 minute chat and then all the work's done by you. I like it. We should carry on this.
Oh, I
This is
was
the
going to
way
say,
forward.
we're recording this a day earlier than we normally do because I am heading to Singapore this weekend. I'm racing at the Singapore, not obviously not the pro race, but the age group race at the PTO Singapore Open. But I'm on the road for 5 weeks, and I was thinking, yeah, Jimbo's going to have to pick up some of the load while I'm on the road.
Yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And not only are you racing the Singapore age group race, but you were invited VIP guest of the PTO for this weekend, were you not?
Uh, Yeah, I got the pass thing, but that's probably because I got a few athletes to race. But I'm going to catch up with a few of them. I'm actually. It's so funny that I've spoken to so many or communicated with so many of the people from the PTO for so long, but I've never met any of them. So it'll actually be
Mm.
good to shake hands and meet some people this weekend. But I'm really I honestly think the PTO have nailed their choice of locations this year. I feel like the venues are such a step up from last year, and I do want to give the PTO a lot of love because obviously, people who listen heard that we spoke a lot about the broadcast and things around the PTO US Open. We were pretty positive in our thoughts around the race with some criticisms. PTO listened. PTO came back and it's like, thank you for the feedback. These are some things. So, like, there's not many other triathlon organizations at the moment that are that open to conversation and communication. So,
Absolutely not.
I'm
Absolutely not.
yeah.
You hit the nail on the head there. You know, they really are listening and evolving with what the sport needs, because that's what you need to do if you want to be a broadcast entity that's creating a package that people want to watch and enjoy. Then you can't be belligerent in what you're delivering, can you? You've got to respond to what the audience wants to see, because otherwise they ain't going to watch it. And I love
Now,
to see it.
yeah, just another little thing now. I had a few people come at us this week because there's something that we didn't really touch on last week when we were talking about the PTO before we get to the interview. We've got the incredible Skye Moench coming in a little while. But we didn't talk about Jan Frodeno with his swim skin crossing the mountain line and then giving his swim skin to the official. Now, the genuine reason is that I didn't bring it up last week is because I'd forgotten about it, because to me it was a complete non-event. But enough
Yeah,
people have sort of pointed
non-story.
it out to us that I thought we should sort of have a chat around it. Now, again, I'll ask your opinion, but my understanding from what Jan said is he realized when he just was disheveled, couldn't get into his kit properly, got to the line, realized he still had it on, stopped, and was going to shove it into his race kit. But the official referee who was standing at the mountain line actually said to him, no, give it to me. Uh, you go first, mate. What do you think about this? Is it a deal? Do you think that, because it's worth saying, a female pro whose name I can't remember did get penalized for this on the Sunday, so there is a discrepancy. But what are your thoughts?
I don't think it should be a penalty for her for a start. That would be where I'd first go. But I don't think it's much of a deal. Certainly not from Jan's perspective. If it is a deal, it's a deal for the organization to deal with that discrepancy and ask themselves questions. From Jan's perspective, as an athlete who's in the race, who's racing, he'd stopped. He was, like you said, he was going to shove it down his top. When the official race referee says to you, you don't have to do that, give it to me, I'll get rid of it. You know,
Done.
from Jan's perspective, done.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just gonna do that in that moment, aren't you? If the race have got a discrepancy problem, they've penalised somebody on one day for the same thing and not on the other day, then they need to have that discussion internally and decide what they're going to do about it. But from an athlete's perspective and almost from an audience perspective, I would say it's a non-story.
I think that if we had seen Jan just take it off and throw it and
Yeah,
just leave it there,
different.
I would, this would be a completely different conversation to me. But I think that he did everything right. I also don't have an issue with the officials saying, no, just give it to me. Like, again, every set of rules you have will always have an element. Again, and I mean, I've never seen the PTO rules, but I'm assuming that there is something somewhere about the discretion of the official race referees. That's most sport would have. Whether it would have really impacted the race, again, I don't really think so, to be honest. Like, I really, and again, I saw, I'm not discrediting your thoughts, and I completely hear what you're saying, but to me, it's just nothing. It's not even a factor. So, um,
Agreed. I think we're both on the same page there, eh?
yeah, again, it is disappointing to hear that it was sort of inconsistently applied that a female got a penalty. But again, I'm not sure. I don't want to talk too much about it, but I know that there was some concern around Trevor Foley, I think, who, I hope I've got the name right, was told that he was lapped out, but then maybe wasn't. But so again, there's still some things, but we're talking about it's still a very young organization, and I think we have to give them some wiggle room. But yeah, to me, not an issue. Anyway, got that out of the way. If people want to hear that, or if they want to really hear what we think about the PTO, here's a good opportunity to plug our Patreon, patreon.com/talking triathlon, because our first bonus episode, remember the launch of the PTO, is us talking a lot about the PTO, what they sort of promised, and where we think things are sort of at. And spoiler alert, I guess, where we think things maybe have gone a bit wrong. I think it's a really great conversation. If you enjoy that, you want to support us doing this podcast, bring it to you video, the reels we put on Instagram, things like that. It's literally going to pay our video editor, patreon.com/talking triathlon, $5 a month.
We're talking to you, Sam Renouf. We know you listen. You know you need to be a patron to hear what we really think about the PTO. You better sign up, son.
Or Anthony or Tom. I know you listen, Tom. Maybe you're going to get the inside scoop. But look, without further ado, we have a fantastic guest this week. I got to sit down with Skye Moench, who is one of our favorite female pros on the planet. We both have
one of my favorite people on the planet as well. Just go alongside that. I think she's brilliant.
Wonderful. Just a wonderful human. I enjoyed this conversation with Skye so much so that I think me and Skye did, much like I did with David the other day, speak for like another half an hour. It was to the point where I have to go. I have another meeting. Just a truly, truly wonderful athlete and human. So we'll drop the interview and we'll have a bit more of a chat about Skye afterwards. Well, we are very lucky this week to be joined by our first female guest since we've rebranded the podcast as Talking Triathlon. And there is somebody that I always love to talk triathlon with. That is American professional triathlete, multiple 70.3 and Ironman champion, Skye Moench. Skye, how you going? Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, good. Thanks for having me. I didn't realize I had the honor of first female, but I'm happy to be that.
I think this is your third or fourth time. We've probably, it's been a while. It's been a few times, but it has been a while since we've had you on. As I sort of was saying before, there's not a whole lot of structure, but I guess a good place to start. How are you going? Like how are things at the moment in your world?
Things are good. I mean, summer's my favorite season, so I'm thriving in the summer season. As you saw on my Instagram, nice 34 Celsius, 93 Fahrenheit run. I just raced the PTO US Open, which was like a ton of fun, even though it looked like I got my butt kicked. I mean, I did get my butt kicked, but like it was fun. I had so much fun doing it. And yeah, it was a lot of good motivation for, I don't know, just the career ahead and the rest of the season ahead. So yeah, but I have a burning question for you right now, looking at all your Trek bikes.
Oh yeah, come on, here they are.
Okay, so there's the Speed Concept.
Yep.
And then is that the Amonda or the Madone?
So the Amonda's leaning up against the wall because I don't have 3 bike racks at the moment. Then behind me is the new Madone. So.
Oh yeah, I should have looked lower and seen the seat post. Okay, so you do still have all 3. I wasn't sure if you had to give one up.
No, I've decided I'm going to keep all 3. I was umming and ahhing about getting rid of the Amonda. Again, I'm just going to need a new bike setup because I don't have 3 bike racks. But no, I think I realized as well. I've basically designated the Amonda is going to be my new. It's going to be my new travel bike because one of the when I travel for work, I often take a bike with me, and the Amonda I think it's the lightest, and it's a bit older, so I'm not as precious about it. But I took the Madone out for the first ride on the weekend, and yeah, it's a beauty. I was hitting some pretty decent numbers on it, which it's like I don't know if it's the bike. I'm going to believe it's just that my training's going really well. But
it's definitely the Trek Madone. It's definitely the Trek Madone.
Well, I believe I know we have a bit. I know we have a bit of back and forth about the colors of our bikes because clearly mine are all the blue and you love your purple. But you've been teasing me that you've got something special coming for Kona this year. Any hints? Any little tidbits?
I guess the hint is
purple.
You're gonna love it, but well, there is some purple, but it's different from my other bikes. I will say this is like the most different from my other bikes, but it will be. I think it'll be really well received. So Trek just came out with a bunch of cool new paint schemes. The tour riders, women and men, I think kind of showcase some of them, and triathlon. It's our turn next for the World Championships coming up. So there's my hint.
Ooh, I did see that the monochrome Madonna. And again, I'm very happy with the Project One paint that I have on my Treks, but I did see that monochrome one. I thought, oh, that's tempting actually. Like that was a very nice paint job. But they're Trek corner here. We're both like our Trek bikes, but I'm excited to see what you unveil in Kona this year. Anyway, look, we as I sort of said, there's I think the PTO US Open you sort of touched on, and I would like to have a bit of a chat about that because you're the first person I've discussed who is there on the ground. We saw an incredible weekend of racing. Firstly, let's not talk about the race so much, but let's talk about your experience in Milwaukee. How did you find the event? How did you find the organization, being part of it, the distance, all those sort of things? What are your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the PTO puts on a race solely focused on the professionals, right? And you can really feel that. Like you can feel that the race is about you, and that it's about the professionals. So you feel special being a part of it as a professional. And it's awesome to have the race course to yourself. Like as much as I love sharing the race course with friends and age groupers, like having the entire race course and the show being all about the professionals, like that, it just feels right, you know, like that is professional sport. Yes. Yes, it feels professional. So obviously that aspect is awesome. I guess one thing compared to other PTO events I've been at, like this one felt a little more separated male female. Like usually we have the same race briefing together. There's just a little more overlap, and like I hardly saw the guys. And
Really?
part of what I like about, yeah, it was really interesting. Like I think the only thing I did that we were both kind of organized together was the swim familiarization. So but then you're swimming, so you're not really doing a lot of chatting when your face is in the water.
If yeah, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But no, it was awesome. I thought the race course was great. I'd raced there before as an age grouper. And it's just a perfect venue to be able to like shut down this huge section of road and not have it totally shut down the entire city. So I think that's why it's been such a successful venue for USA Triathlon. So yeah, race course, I have no complaints. I mean, yes, it was a lot of loops, but I like loop courses and I totally want spectators to be there on every single loop. So I'm down. And fortunately, the loops were big enough that, you know, Taylor Nib did not laugh the bike. That was when they brought up the laughing rule, I thought, oh shoot, like Taylor, she could really do some damage if she goes crazy on the front there. But I don't think anyone got looped out on the or lapped out on the bike, fortunately. So yeah, no, positive experience all around, no complaints. Super easy venue. I mean, I just stayed in a hotel downtown and then it was either walking distance or a short drive to the or ride your bike down to the race venue. So that was appreciated. It's nice not having to do a bunch of like travel time at races. You're trying to rest and all that. So yeah, it was great.
Well, that's as I sort of was saying just before, I'm going to Singapore for this weekend. I mean, I'm there for work, but I'm also doing the event myself. And I mean,
Yeah.
are you familiar with Singapore? Are you familiar with the city?
Not really. I've heard you talk about it actually on the podcast, and
Okay.
I looked into it a little bit because I was considering going to race, but it looks like a really cool place.
Well, I also really like to keep the travel time as low as I try to stay as close to the race venue as I can. The only problem with this race
Yeah.
is it's directly outside the Marina Bay Sands, which is one of, if not the most expensive hotels in Singapore. And I went, yeah, not this time. I'm not looking to spend $1,000 a night just to, wake up and walk. So I'm staying close by, but not quite as close as I would have liked. But I thought that's probably the only note I'd have for Sam and the team is, yeah, come on, guys. Like, I mean, I'm joking. Obviously, it's an absolutely incredible venue, but yeah, I really think that the PTO have nailed the venues this year. All three events. I mean, I say it like Singapore's already happened. I just know what Singapore's like. I really like Ibiza as a venue, and I found Milwaukee. That was a weird pronunciation. As a spectator watching it online, it's the best course they've had because it was so easy to identify the course based on landmarks. So when you were watching the race, I knew exactly. I could really tell where athletes were on course based on what was around them. Like it was, I really feel like that's an element that's often overlooked with thinking about a broadcast. Ibiza, you couldn't really tell, especially on the bike. It was literally had no idea where anybody was. But the Milwaukee race, from a pure spectator point of view, I thought was exceptional. And I'm happy to hear that experience was good. You talked about the separation of the men and women. And again, this shows the fact that we have no structure, but it is something we're seeing a lot this year in particular, I suppose, in professional triathlon. We've got the women are racing in Kona over a month after the men are racing their world championships in Nice. We've got the separate races for the men and women in the PTO events, separate European champs for Ironman. There is a lot more separation. I mean, I'm an Australian. Australia's playing in the semi-final of the Women's World Cup tonight. We are really starting to see this, I guess, I don't know what, like focus on female sports. Do you think that that
Mhm.
is in triathlon? I mean, triathlon's always been quite an equal sport in sense of same course, same prize money, things like that. But how do you feel as one of the leading female professional triathletes? Like, are you noticing a change this year or in the recent years, or like, what's your perspective on it?
I guess my perspective, I really, really love that we have a race course to ourselves. I think that's very important. And I think Kona really helped to showcase how exciting the women's racing is. And I know that 70.3 Worlds have done a little bit of that previously, right? Like Kona wasn't the first time ever that women had their own race day, but I think Kona is just the biggest race in long course triathlon, at least as of right now, and certainly as of last year. So it just got so many eyes. The women's race got so many eyes on it. And I think really showed how exciting our racing is and how competitive and deep the fields are now. And that's another thing to say, is that I think the women's racing has gotten way deeper in the last few years than it was even 5 or 6 years ago. Like when I started racing pro, it's a completely different story now, like completely. So I think that's helping as well. So yeah, I do feel like there's more attention and more even more equality for the women and men. I mean, like you mentioned, the pay's always been equal, but I do think there's still a lot of work to do for equal media attention and probably sponsorship dollars. I think there's probably a huge disparity there. And even when you listen to podcasts, and I'm not saying this about your podcast in general, but other podcasts too, like the default is to be like, oh, imagine the best athletes in the world, like Christian and Jan and Gustav. And like, yes, those are the best athletes in the world, but why do we always default to like the men's names, you know? And a lot of it's because they are the bigger characters, right? They show a little more personality, or they get more spotlight to show that personality and things. So I do think there's a long way to go still to have it be like totally equal, but I really appreciate how far it's come in the last little while.
You've made an interesting point then, and I'm just again thinking off the top of my head, because
Yeah.
if I do think around the way that especially women are being covered in the sport, and I think that we've got some really big female characters in the sport, but the first two examples that come to mind for me are Chelsea Sodaro and Kat Matthews at the moment. And if I look at the way that they're being covered, there's a big focus on Chelsea as a mother and Kat as coming back from her crash. And it's kind of right. It's not just look at these incredible athletes from their purely performance point of view. It's always like, what's the hook? What's the angle? What's this point of difference? Again, that's just me coming off the top of my head. I did hear while you were racing, there was talk in the commentary around the difference in, I guess, the female setup on bikes, or I guess the focus on technology that female pro triathletes are perceived to have compared to the males. You know, we see the guys like Joe Skipper and Magnus Ditlev and Jan and Christian with their, you know, they've got the things down the bikes and the things on the back and the water bottles on the front and this sort of stuff. We don't tend to see that much in the women's field. And a comment was maybe is around the sponsorship dollars. I mean, again, as a female pro, like, do you think is there less focus on the women's side in the technology? Is it because there's less money available? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
That's interesting. And it probably depends on the person. I mean, I think maybe for whatever reason on the men's side, there's more interest in that. I know that like I've done some aero testing this year, and I've done races. I did a couple of races with bottles down my front this race or this year. And certainly maybe we're a little bit behind on the men with the technology. Maybe they lead the way and then we're like, oh, that's a good idea. And we follow. But I do think budgets are part of it, you know, like time in the wind tunnel and aero testing, any kind of aero testing is quite expensive. And so it's like, unless your sponsors are willing to pay for that for you, then you're having to shell out like $1,000. And that's a lot of money. Like that's still a lot of money for most, I mean, triathletes, I would say in general, but probably particularly female pro triathletes, because I don't think as many female pros are making an actual living as probably on the men's side. And that's completely just based off what I think and knowing how much I make and where I lay in, you know, rankings on the women's side, but and just what it took to get where I'm at now and things like that. So yeah, budgets are probably part of it. And maybe it just all, I think the aero testing and all those things too, like that's just picked up so much in the last couple of years, like so much. So I think we'll probably be seeing more of it on the women's side. But we'll let Magnus figure out all the fast stuff and then we'll just watch and do what he does.
I do love that. I think there's a video of Joe from Ironman Texas this year where he had Joe's got the aero bottles that sit on top.
Yeah.
And again, obviously I'm Joe's manager. So this video that Ironman put up has had over 2 million views on their Instagram.
They're like, what is on his bike?
Yeah, what the hell is this thing? It's like, no, he did some extensive testing to know that it's again, I didn't intend for this to be an area of focus, but now that we're here, I look at the way that even the PTO, sort of who I think are the gold standard at the moment in terms of I guess the media coverage of the sport and the broadcast, and even the pre-race things that we've seen them do. We saw those incredible videos. I loved them. The Christian versus Jan. We saw it before Ibiza. We saw it before Milwaukee. I feel like they try to do it with the women, but we saw the big hoo-ha a couple of years ago now between Holly and
Ellie.
Oh my God, Ellie, and it feels like they're sort of still trying to force this, like there's a rivalry sort of thing where it actually kind of feels like there probably isn't, to be honest. I wonder, is it a case, and again, I don't know, but are the women pros maybe less comfortable with that sort of approach, or is it like, I don't know, is there an element of gameship that, I mean, I don't know, again, I'm not even sure what I'm asking here, but
I totally get what you're saying, because I actually thought a lot about this. I mean, I've thought a lot about this in general over the years. Because I'm like, why don't the women get the same hype and attention? And it's because we don't have the same personalities and stories and hype and self-hype and all that. Like, and part of that is, okay, yeah, maybe there's less of us who have booming YouTube channels or things like that. But take, for example, the video into the PTO US Open with Christian and Chelsea, where they spotlighted them both. And Chelsea was very confident and very like, I'm hard to beat if I'm on. And she's right. She's totally right. Like, look at what she did at Kona. If she's firing, she's extremely hard to beat. And all the comments were that she was so cocky and this isn't working for me. And yet Christian Blumenfeld can sit there and say that there's no way Jan's going to beat him, or Jan can tell Christian that he acted like a child, or whatever freaking went on. I don't even know. But so if Chelsea says it, it's cocky. If Christian says it, it's just like they're frothing for the race to happen. Like they just can't wait. So it's like, I don't know what it is. Is it sexism? Is it just this expectation that women just need to like be quiet and be nice? Or like, I don't know. Because quite frankly, like I have a lot of competitiveness, and there's women I'd love to kind of go back and forth with, and some really can't take it. Like some just can't take it, or they don't want to dish it back. I feel like Kat and I could kind of do it a little bit.
I was going to say that time we had you both on the podcast, that was very good. I didn't interview you, but I definitely listened when I did the edit.
Well, and then even like with Heather Jackson, like I kind of had that for a while. I tried to kind of nourish a bit of a rivalry there. And of course, like all love for Heather Jackson and all love for
of course
Pat Matthews, but of course I want to beat them. That's what motivates me. Like if I don't want to beat people, like you have to want to win to be, I think, a really driven professional. Like we're not all just doing this just because we love swimming, biking, and running. I mean, we do, but like it's the thrill of it. You got to have that thrill of the hunt, all of that. So I don't know. It's tough because when you act a little bit masculine, I guess, then you're cocky, or you're whatever name people want to call you. So
it is funny, and maybe my views are skewed. A big pathway into professional racing for me was Chris McCormack, my now boss, Macca, who was very, very outspoken during his career and said a lot of inflammatory things to try to get under the skin of his competitors. And knowing Chris as well as I now know him, and the conversations we have about it, that's not who he was. Like he was very much playing a character. He worked out that I can play the villain, I can play the eyes are on me. And that's why I also think what's funny is, like, and I know a lot of the pros that I'm dealing with, the podcast, my job, things like that. And it's very funny to hear or see the way that some of them at least, are publicly facing compared to personally. They're very different. And sometimes it's the other way. Sometimes I wish they were more like some of the guys I work with. I wish that the way they were privately, they would present that way publicly. And it is fascinating to see. But I think you're right. Like there is this. Yeah, there is an issue, I suppose, with women sort of doing it, because you're right. I did see, as soon as you mentioned that Chelsea video, I knew what you were going to talk about, because I did see that too, and I didn't watch it, but I remember thinking, well, that's okay. What she said, and it can't be that bad. And again, I kind of really like that aspect of it. I love it when you hear people come out and just be like, "I'm going to crush you." Like we need more of that, and that's what we think. I mean, again, look at the even on the men, the Sam Laidlow, Sam Long thing in the Collins Cup last year, and like Sam Laidlow, I don't think did anything necessarily bad. And it really Like, I mean, people really either love him or hate him now.
Yeah.
It's just a fascinating thing where I think that, I mean, here's another example. And I saw this was Jan Frodeno's post-race video where he was talking about how Christian punched him at the ball. And he's like, yeah, we can have
Oh
the change
yeah.
to the guard, but the throne stays with me. And so
Yeah.
many people being like, why is he so cocky? Why is so? And I put up a comment on the Instagram post and I said that the same people who are saying triathlon is boring has transitioned very quickly to how dare he say this sort of thing. Like it's
Yes.
weird to me. It's such a
Yeah.
weird, and I don't know whether it is the same people or if it's just different groups of people who are speaking up at different times. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's an odd thing with the sport at the moment, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
do you think that is that because that there's not enough outside of the sport interest? Is this because the people who are commenting or watching these things are the athletes who do the sport, so therefore they have the same thought about professionals that they like? I can't see an age grouper who's struggling to go under 10 hours for an iron straight, whatever.
Yeah.
Going, I'm gonna crush. Like it's just not in their mind. Is that maybe what it is?
Right. Oh, that is an interesting point. I haven't thought about that, because you can see how, like, if there's a lot of people are in this for like the satisfaction of completing an Ironman, and everyone gets a finisher medal, everyone's a winner. Maybe that's more the attitude they have for the sport, and the professionals have a competitive drive, killer instinct, whatever you want to call it. Versus, yeah, like any other sport we would all watch, whether it's basketball or Formula One or whatever. We totally appreciate that, like, there's one objective and it's winning, right? Like, yeah, that certainly could be a contributing factor. Or I wonder too, like, the pros in triathlon, I think, are relatively accessible compared to other pro sports. So
Sometimes
then people
too accessible, I think.
Well, yeah, like you just texted me like 2 hours ago.
I'm the exception. I'm always allowed to have access. It's
No, I'm kidding. But like we're more accessible, and maybe because it's a smaller sport, and so then people maybe think they know us, and then if you act in a way that they don't like, then it's like, oh yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's interesting. But
what do you think then? Because something I'm very passionate about. I am very passionate about the pro side of the sport. Like, I think things like what the PTO do, the separating. I am very much, and I know I get a lot of hate. I don't particularly think that the power of our sport is the pro share the course, and it's. I want to see a lot of that stuff go away to make the sport purely professional. I really feel like there needs to be a focus. What are some of the things you think that could be done in the sport at the moment to, I guess, go further down the line of making it a truly professional sport?
Yeah, well, I think what the PTO is doing and what they have planned for the coming years is that route, right? Like, it's going to make the races about the pros. Like, certainly anything, like I said, anything the PTO does, like, it's about the pros. And I think that's huge, right? Like, giving us the spotlight. I think also more people who can make a really, and I don't know what level, but like a really good living. And that doesn't mean we all need to be millionaires next year, but like enough so that, yeah, then we can all have a media person or have a physio travel, like, because the very, very top can afford all this, right? Like, they can have the traveling physio, the traveling agent, the traveling media person, and it shows, right? But like, for most of us, that would be, sure, maybe some of us could afford that, but then we wouldn't be making an actual profit from triathlon. We'd just be constantly spending everything we made. And, maybe then it would grow. There's the return on investment aspect of all that. But I think the more athletes who we can get at the like truly professional income level would really help professionalize the sport, and would probably make it faster as well. I mean, having a YouTube person doesn't make you faster, but certainly having someone to take care of your body all the time, or maybe a coach traveling with you more. I mean, you look at tennis players, I'm like, their entire team is at every single match. Like, they go everywhere. So I think that's huge, and that the income is going to come from sponsorships and the media attention on the races. So, I mean, I really hope the PTO is really successful in what they're trying to do and what they have set to do. And I think, well, I know we're all going to learn a lot more in the next couple months about what is coming. So
we've heard whispers,
yeah, we've heard whispers, and some of us were on the athlete board with when some things were shared. So yeah, it's really
we'll continue the
exciting.
conversation after we stop recording.
It's exciting. I mean, things may have changed since the meeting I was in, but no, certainly, yeah, I think building the profiles, so athletes can financially support themselves, because there's still top athletes who probably are like not actually making that much of a profit off what they're doing, because it's so expensive. Like everything I just mentioned, the expectation for us to have all those things and the need, honestly, it's expensive.
While we're on this, talking about the PTO, because I spoke with Dave McNamee about this a couple of weeks ago, and I actually thought Dave gave some really fascinating insights. But one of the things I noticed with the Milwaukee race, particularly in the women's field, was, to me, it was, while the field was great, I couldn't help but look at the list of names that weren't there. Like there was so many of those, I guess, particularly middle distance specialists, the Emma Pallant Browns. There was no Chelsea. I'm not sure what happened to Chelsea, but I know she intended to race there. Who else was there? There was no
Lucy Charles wasn't there. Laura Phillip wasn't there.
Yeah, Laura, perfect. A lot of these athletes who went and opted for other races or just didn't race.
Yeah.
What do you like? Is there an element of the PTO set up this ecosystem for us to thrive? Now it's on us as the athletes to actually roll up our sleeves and do the work.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about that part?
Yeah, so I totally agree. Like the athletes need to be on board and we need to support it. I think the problem with this year, and this will be different next year, the way things will change next year. I believe it will be different next year. But right now, unfortunately, the prize money was cut this year. So last year, all the prize purses were $1 million. This year, they were $600,000. And it may not sound like much, but they still wanted to give the winner $100,000.
Yeah,
so that's a third of the prize money. The drop off is huge.
Huge.
So for someone like me, for example, who I'm not afraid to go race all these women, and I love to go race all these women. Like looking at Singapore for me, for example, I was like, okay, a plane ticket economy is $2,500. First class is $8,500. The flight is 17 hours. Do I want to sit in economy for 17 hours when I'm trying to get the best out of my body? Yep. No. So $8,500 plane ticket if I want to perform. And then you look at the prize breakdown and the way it is this year, like I think I would have to be top 5 to even break even on my flight. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that doesn't include accommodation. And so then when I look at it, I'm like, okay, well, I have Kona coming up. That's my biggest race of the year. Is it worth making little to no money in Singapore to just go race Singapore? So it's kind of, because then it's kind of like, I'm not that I'm doing the PTO a favor, like that race is going to go on whether I go there or not, but then it's like I'm almost financially supporting the PTO by just going. So I think this year that probably was a factor for people. I mean, even people like Laura Phillip or, Emma Pallant, I have not spoken to these women, so I have no idea. But when they look at, a flight over to the US, it's going to cost that much, and the recovery and the wear and tear and all of that, like, is it worth the dollars? Probably not if you're out of the top 3, honestly. And even then, I don't know what third was. Was it $30,000? I
don't remember off the top of my head. I think maybe around there.
I think maybe it was $30,000 at the US Open. So like coming from Europe, and if you still have your biggest races to come, you may not even flinch at that, So I think that was a big factor for this year. Next year, it should be different.
And again, I just love your perspective, because I certainly know with the guys that I work with what the sort of thoughts are. But with your sponsors, have you found that the sponsors, because some brands that I deal with aren't really even interested in PTO events as bonus events, like have you found your sponsors really like the PTO events? Like, has there been an uptake? Because I expected, I think, like, again, part of my job as an agent is always trying to say, no, this is where the value is. Like, you should definitely offer big bonuses for these races. Have you found that your sponsors are interested in the PTO events? Like, are they big events for them?
I think it's a mix. Some may offer bonuses, but I think for me and the athlete that I currently am and what I'm focused on, like Kona is the big thing, right? So Kona for me. But I do think the sponsors, well, right now, I think they see that their market is still Ironman, right? Like the age groupers and all of that. So PTO is still just proving itself, but I do think that it is becoming more important to sponsors, or sponsors are seeing the value that they get out of an athlete being at one of those races, even if you don't podium, right? Like you still get the hype around the race. Because even though I probably got zero coverage on the PTO US Open, I was still there and I could still post and people were still interacting. They're just hyped about the race. So even just by virtue of being there, like you just get some good traction, at least on social media.
My thoughts, I guess what I'm sort of hoping will happen, and I think that it's still that we're in this quite a transition moment with triathlon, is I think that the growth of something like the PTO, which is specifically geared towards non-triathletes as the main audience, is, I hope, again, fingers crossed. It'll bring a lot of non-endemic sponsorship into the
Yeah.
sport. Whereas I think that if you look at, the traditional model is, endemic. So again, for people like in sport brands at the moment are probably the majority of most triathlete sponsorship. And you're right. If you're a Trek, for example, and the PTO broadcast is suddenly going out to millions of people, most of who don't ride bikes, the value might not be there. But suddenly you might have these brands like a Mercedes or a, I don't know, Subaru, who's suddenly like, well, I want to sell my car to millions. So that's kind of what I'm hoping. And I think it is this interesting time at the moment in the business side of the sport, because we are having different ways of doing things. And I hope that that's, fingers crossed, what's going to eventuate as part of that. So
I agree.
You did touch on it, and I would love to speak a little bit about how you see your position in the sport at the moment. You said, you're the sort of athlete you are. How do you see yourself? Like, what sort of athlete do you see yourself as at the moment?
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously I think for a long time I saw myself as quite well-rounded. Like I could win a 70.3 here or there, or be quite competitive. I mean, I was 6th at 70.3 worlds in 2021. Like that's not that long ago. And then I was 4th and 9th at St. George and Kona. So I felt quite well-rounded, but I do feel like with the PTO, it's extremely difficult to try to feel well-rounded if you're still doing Ironman. Like I just did Frankfurt 5 weeks ago, and then I had like 10 days off my mid-season break. Then I trained 2 weeks really hard, and then I went and did Milwaukee. So I guess I see myself as an athlete who I can do both comfortably, but I feel like right now, because I still focus on Ironman, then that is where I'm going to perform the best. But the other thing is with like the PTO events is there's a lot of women who only do that. Like they only do the middle distance. So that's what you're up against. And I think I could be faster at it. Like if I really wanted to, if I just did PTO events, say like next year, I'm like, you know what, I'm just doing PTO events. I think I could be more competitive and fast or whatever if you just focus on that. But I don't feel like I'm really answering your question, but I just feel like I can do both, kind of all of it reasonably well, but where I'm really going to excel when I put my head down is Ironman right now.
Do you think that is that specialization necessarily a bad thing? We just were talking about increasing the professionalism of the sport. And I think if you look at a lot of other professional sports out there, the athletes are good at one thing, like particularly, whereas they don't suddenly go, well, I'm good at this and this and this, and I do a bit of this and a bit of this. Do you think that maybe that because I really like that we have some very specific athletes. And again, not trying to be disrespectful, I very much see you as a very strong Ironman athlete.
Totally.
Who can do some middle distance racing. But to me, your strength lies in, much like Joe Skipper, much like...
Totally.
Like I see you as that. And I like that. Like, I think that is something that the sport actually needs. I feel like recently with these pesky Norwegians and Taylor Nibs and stuff, where we sort of have people who are just doing everything and sort of doing really well at it.
I know.
I mean, I joke, and again, I know Christian really well, but I do joke that it gets a bit boring to pick him at every race he fucking does. Like, I really like.
He hasn't won though recently. Like he's barely winning.
In fact, I've reminded him of a few times.
Good.
But no, like I really like the specialization aspect, because I feel like it's how we're going to actually see specialists. Like that's where we're going to see the performances, I suppose, really start to specify. And because again, I mean, I've never done an Ironman. I never want to do an Ironman. I have literally zero interest in Ironman as an athlete. But I feel like it takes, you can, if you have somebody who's purely focused on how to perfect 3.8 kilometer swim, 180 kilometer bike, followed by a marathon, that's where we're going to see these incredible performances. And I really want to see that. So.
Yeah, I mean, you have a really valid point there. And I've thought about this too, because I'm like, okay, well, maybe if the PTO takes all these middle distance athletes and that's all they do, and then I could just hammer out Ironmans all year, because I could do that. I recover well, my body, I'm very durable, all of that. So then it's like, okay, does that open up the Ironman market for me, right? Like, then can I just focus on Ironman? Should I just focus on Ironman? I mean, these are just things I've never spoken to anyone about this. I've just had these thoughts, but now we're talking. So then, then it's like, okay, but then PTO is bringing in all this money. And if I'm ranked high enough to constantly be invited to these races, like, then should I just, I mean, if the prize structure was such that it was more profitable to race their races, because even if you're getting like 10th, 11th, 12th, but you're still getting like $20,000, I mean, you don't win $20,000 at even most Ironman events. So it's really interesting. Like it's a really interesting time. And I think I think for me, I'm just, you make decisions based on what you know and the facts you have in front of you. So I guess we'll see what happens next year with PTO and all of that and what decisions I'll make. But I feel like no matter what I do, like I'll thrive. So we'll just kind of see what happens. But yeah, Ironman is what I would consider myself more elite at within the sport.
We look at Ironman as a brand, and I feel like, and again, I don't have any, unlike probably most of the other organizations, I have almost no dialogue with Ironman.
Yeah, none of us have real dialogue with Ironman. It's
Whereas,
very robotic.
It's funny. One of the things I was gonna like. We did an episode about the PTO last week, and I've literally had the PTO send feedback talking about the things that we spoke of. Like that's how open the dialogue. Like I'm meeting the guys in Singapore this week, but I feel like Ironman at the moment, like I find it very interesting as an outsider. Again, somebody who I don't know, probably obsesses over this stuff more than most other people do, but I almost feel like we're seeing this hubris for Ironman at the moment, where they've sort of felt like they're so big, and the positives and negatives of Messick, whatever that sort of stuff is. I feel like we might see a shift in coming years where Ironman suddenly realize, much like we've seen in the bike industry in recent times, like bikes, bike brands aren't doing as well as they were previously because everybody bought bikes during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I wonder if we will see a shift where Ironman are going to come back to the pros and go, yeah, we've sort of neglected you guys for a while, but we realize that we do need you to be part of this ecosystem. Do you see that as like, I don't know, have you thought about that as well? Or can you see that happening or?
I haven't thought about it too much, but I guess it kind of crossed my mind with Messick stepping down. And I don't know, I think it was a podcast. It may have been your podcast I was listening to. But this podcast that we're on that I was listening to.
We were talking about triathlon.
Talking triathlon. You were talking about it, and it made me think like, that could be really interesting. Like if a new CEO comes in and is like, forget the pros, like we're scrapping all the pros prize money, or like it's a possibility. And I haven't heard anything to think that, but yeah, change in leadership could really change things. Or maybe that leader decides, hey, yeah, the pros are really valuable. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I could see that happening though, because I do feel like we add a lot of value, and people, it's funny because I know there's a lot of triathletes there's a lot of people who do triathlon, whether they identify as like a full-on triathlete, because there's a lot of people who do a few and it's just something they do, that they have no clue about the pros, right? Like there are tons of triathletes out there who,
the majority, I would say, to be honest.
Pro.
I would probably say the majority of people who participate in triathlon, I think that's probably the majority, unfortunately.
Yeah, and probably at the grassroots level, especially because like there's not a pro field in these local events and things like that. So, but Ironman, like people who do Ironman are usually more serious athletes, right? Like if you're going to commit to a freaking Ironman, you're probably going to be on a TT bike. Like you go to a local race and it's all road bikes, So, anyway, I guess I could see that happening, right? Like,
well,
they're neglecting us more and more, but
yeah. Well, you've got a business background. We know you're an accountant. Let's say that you get the phone rings after this. We heard you on Talking Triathlon this week. We like you've got gumption. We like what you're about, Skye Moench. We'd like you to apply for the role of CEO of Ironman. If you were to be appointed head of the group, what are some of the things, like what would you like to see them do I'm not focused for the pros. Let's forget again. I know that listeners, I'm sorry. Let's move the age group stuff aside, because I think Ironman do a very good job of the age group thing. I mean, I know that many people, but as a pro and to grow the pro side of Ironman, what do you think they should do?
Well, I think it doesn't seem like they've worked really to try and create a televised product that would actually be like on a channel of some sort. I mean, they've just stuck to Facebook or like, I guess
outside TV, now. Outside.
Yeah, I guess outside TV is their thing, but it doesn't seem like they've really aspired to create much more of a quality broadcast that would be of interest to a TV channel. So I think like what the PTO thinks and is trying to do, coming up with a broadcast, like a way to make a broadcast out of a race, that's very interesting. And I guess there is a challenge in that it's either a 4-hour race or like an 8 to 9 hour race, and that is a challenge. But yeah, figuring that out and just helping build the professional profiles, I think that's huge. And to give Ironman credit, they have spent more money I'm assuming, and time trying to do that, like with their fighting chance series and things like that. But I don't think they are that interesting, to be honest. Like every time they come visit me for a fighting chance, I'm like, you guys, literally, I was on my bike trainer the last 5 times. Like, how about we go get lunch or something and just talk about anything? And it's just kind of, I don't know, it feels very repetitive to me. So I don't know how effective those videos are. I never actually watch my own even because I just don't want to see it. So yeah, I think the broadcast is where you have to focus. And then obviously as a pro, like you could do things to make the pro experience at the races feel a little more special. Like I don't feel like we get any special treatment. We used to even be able to check our bikes in the night before or the day of, and now we always have to do it the night before. And
really, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, like
Wow.
you used to be able to take some the morning of, which is nice. Like it's nice. I don't know.
I get it. I wish I could. I'm just with the plebs.
Yeah. I mean, I see why people have to do it, but yeah.
What about collaboration? Because this is the thing that I'm quite vocal about, is I feel like there's so much segmentation in the sport at the moment, and everything's quite silent. And I actually really think that if the sport wants to grow, that there needs to be collaboration. Like what sort of collaboration do you think would be good?
Well, I think a good collaboration would be like PTO and Ironman or Roth or something, because I do think there needs to be. I get that the 100K distance is fast and exciting and it's shorter and people can watch it. But the reality is like, if people really want to watch something or they want to invest their time in it, they're going to. I mean, like my husband watches golf and tennis, like hours and hours and hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if he really wants to watch it, and sure, maybe it's not consecutive, but like if he wants to see something, he's going to spend time watching it. So I think it would be awesome to see some collaboration for the longer distance athletes, like Ironman specialists or the Ironman distance specialist, where you can have the spotlight and come up with a big production for full distance races. And collaborating. Ironman and PTO could certainly collaborate in some way, and I don't know if they've made much headway with that. I know it wasn't there wasn't much going on.
Maybe the new CEO might change things. I don't know, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing would be great. And then that just like the chemistry of it all, like the athlete profiles would just grow, like the more collaboration, the better. Like I just don't see any losing to collaborating.
I mean, I think the first thing I'd like to see from a collaboration point of view is they all sit down at the start of the year and plan out their calendar so that we don't have.
Oh, that is a good point.
Like, I think as a minimum.
Like this month.
Tell me about it. Like, I'm actually, what do we, so we've got we've got the test event, we've got Singapore, we've got 70.3 hours, Super League.
We had US Open.
Nice, US, there's so much happening this, like even for me, I've got athletes that I represent literally, I think at every one of these events. And for me, trying to work out where to go and I'm missing the test event because again, I'm in Singapore. Selfishly, I'm doing a race myself, but then I think I'm going to Super League London. I'm missing 70.3 odds, mostly because accommodation was an absolute nightmare. I'm then going to Nice, and it's just like it was really tough to work out I'm just there to work. Like I'm not having to actually worry about training. I mean, I still have my bike with me, but I don't have to worry about peaking, recovering, peaking again. Like as an athlete this year, and you sort of said earlier, you think this year might be different. I'm not sure from this point of view how different it'll be next year, but what sort of pressures do you feel around it? Like, do you feel a pressure to be as many of them as possible, or do you feel the freedom to go, no, I'm going to pick the ones I want to do? Like, how do you approach this absolutely, I'm going to say ridiculous schedule that's happening at the moment?
I mean, for me personally this year, I didn't put any pressure on myself for anything. I was kind of like, I'm only going to do what I want to do, like in every aspect of my life. So, and that's more of like a backstory, but I can see, because now here we are in August. I just raced the US Open. I had so much fun. I decided not to race Singapore, and I'm like, I stand by my decision, and I know it's the right decision. But am I gonna have FOMO when race comes around? Like, yeah, I am. And even 70.3 Worlds, same thing. Like these championship races, they're so fun, and we call them championship races as if like they're once a year, but like these big races. So like, you want to be part of it as an athlete. You want to be part of it. It's exciting. You get to race the best. Like anything could happen. You could have like an awesome day and just, it can just change your life or just make your year. So yeah, from a planning perspective, I think most people realized from the get-go, like, okay, it's going to be extremely difficult to do all of this. And I know there's a handful of athletes who are doing like everything.
I still don't believe it. I still think
I can't
something's
wait
going
to
to have
see
to give.
it.
Something's going to have to give. I mean, there's one person who I think will do it and will probably
Christian.
crush. He'll do it all and he'll crush it all. He, just because pure force of will will probably
Yes,
get
he
it.
will. Yes, brute force.
But there are others I see, and I just like, I mean, even like,
yeah.
I question if everybody is going to be able to execute quite the way they want. You can't peak at
Yeah.
everything, right? It's not
Yeah.
physically possible.
Well, and it's just the travel, like it's the travel between everything. Like if I tried to do it all, it would be US Open, Singapore, Finland, back home, Kona. You know, like that's I don't know. The recovery from all the travel, I think, is honestly the hardest part. Like even just coming home from Milwaukee, like I was like, man, I'm wiped. Like I need a few days to actually properly recover from this. So yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't feel pressure, but who knows? Who knows if sponsors are like, oh, why didn't you go to this? I don't know. I don't know how much they care. I think for me, because I am that Ironman athlete, Kona's, you know, Skye will be at Kona. Great.
Let's talk about Kona. It's the first time we're going to literally have only the women racing on the
Yes.
island. What are your thoughts about it?
Oh man. I mean, my initial thought when all this happened, when the men and women were separated, was I'm sad that the men aren't going to be there because I'm a fan of the sport. Like and yes, I love having the race course to ourselves, the women, but even if we don't, like I love seeing the men on course. Last year in Kona, I loved watching the men's race. Like it was so fun. I think last year was my first year at Kona, so it's really all I can compare to. But
I remember seeing you run up the hill. I remember seeing you go up Kalani going, come on, Skye.
Gosh, that was rough. But have the women having their own race, I thought was huge. Like fantastic. We talked about that earlier. It was amazing. The men having their own race, amazing. And I just feel like the spectating and everything, like it was such a good vibe for the course, given the course, you know, like it's not the most spectator friendly. So yeah, I'm really bummed that the pro men aren't going to be there. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm kind of jealous they're going to Nice, and it's not that I hate Kona. I like Kona just fine, but like the fact that I'm going to go spend $10,000 to go race and ride on the Queen K for 10 days before, like that doesn't necessarily excite me.
Well, this is kind of what I wanted to get to, I guess, is actually like Kona as a venue. Like, you said last year was your first year there. You know, you have got a long history in the sport. Did you feel the majesty of the island? Like, you know, is it a venue? Because I think I like Kona. I like the history, but I think it's a fucking shit course. Like I don't like it as as an actual course. I think it's terrible. You know, I am very happy. I think Ironman Hawaii is always going to be Ironman Hawaii, and it should always stay forever. But what are your thoughts about it as an actual race?
I mean, when you talk about like the majesty and the special part, I think that all happens on race day because everyone's there, like because the crowds are there. But that's literally all it takes is just like the crowds and everything. I mean, for me as someone who like, you know, like I watched Chrissy Wellington on TV, and that was, you know, where I kind of was like, oh, I think I could do that. Like, yeah, it was cool to go see the Queen K and the Energy Lab and swim around the pier and whatever. But like, I've done it once now. I don't feel like I want to do that every single year. Like, I'm not saying never again. Obviously, I'm going back in like 7 weeks or whatever it is, but I would not be sad if Kona moved away from Kona. Like I'm a little jealous. I loved St. George Ironman.
So did I. It was incredible.
It was awesome. Like, and yeah, I didn't even have Kona to compare to, but people were there, and sure, leading into the race, we were more spread out, but like on race day, it feels like a championship event, and you can create that feeling anywhere, I believe. So yeah, I'm a little jealous the guys are going to Nice. First of all, I love climbing and descending and all of that. So that looks fun to me. And then, yeah, just something different. I mean, yeah, I think I'm really curious to see how Kona goes with women only. Like, I'm curious to see how many sponsors and vendors and all that go to Kona. And even spectators. I mean, there's going to be far fewer race participants. Race participants. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's just a big girls' trip. Are you coming? Like, what's
I'm actually. It's funny because I was thinking while you were talking. Like, I was in Kona in 2019. It was a dream to go. Some of my mates were
Yeah.
racing, so I went to spectate just to geek out, and I had the best time. Like I
Yeah.
remember leaving Hawaii and just saying, like, on the plane to my wife, going, I'm coming back every year. Like this was the best. And then I went back last year and I hated it. Like I
Really?
loved the race days were incredible,
Yes.
but I found the island hideous. It was a horrible experience. There was so much aggression. People were not happy.
Yes.
Everything was, it was so busy. I had to stay
Yes.
10K south, whereas previously I was like, you know, I was at the run turnaround the first time on Ali, and every day going in because I had meetings, it was just traffic. And I remember leaving, and again, to be honest, when I heard that they split the race, I was actually like, thank fuck I don't have to go to Kona this year. Like it's actually because I've got none of the female pros that I represent will be there.
Yeah.
But I was quite relieved just because I found it such a, and it's not to say that, because it's a beautiful place. I love the island. I just didn't enjoy it last year very much. And it really sort of spoiled it for me, because I had such a positive experience in 20. I had the best time. I mean, I got absolutely wasted on race day. I was standing up at I was up on the highway where they wouldn't let spectators go any further, and there's a petrol station right there, and you go serve booze in America. So I was just getting absolutely, it was so hot. So I'm just boozing before I realized I was so drunk that when Jan Frodeno came back down, and you know, he's miles ahead of Tia, I got down on all fours and started like
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was a shit.
You had a really good time.
I had the best time. And I didn't enjoy it that much. Like I was exhausted. And again, I did a lot of traveling last year. And I remember going, okay, I'm happy to not go to Kona this year. And to be honest, I'm not really looking forward to having to go year after. I mean, I've actually signed up for the 70.3, so I'm interested to see what it's going to be like going there.
Interesting.
Doing that race, where it's obviously going to be a lot smaller scale and a bit further away. But I mean, I'm very vocal about thinking that I don't think what makes that race special is the world title. I feel like the world title should, I think that men and women should do the same venue. I think that's really important.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to be in Hawaii for me to.
No.
Again, I don't think Ironman Hawaii is special because it's a world championship. I think it's special because it's the home of the race.
Yeah. And your point about like not feeling, did you say it didn't feel safe or something like that? I don't know. But I couldn't believe, I was like, wait, we're all riding our bikes up and down this crazy busy highway for
proper highway,
the entire full-on highway, stuff in the shoulder, cars driving so fast. And I was like, my mind was kind of blown. And then not to mention running on that same highway. Like, it was not what I had imagined at all. I guess because I'd only watched race coverage, so the roads are closed and you're like, oh, that looks cool. But then you get out there and you're like, okay, well, this is just a hot, long road with some big rollers and stuff like that. So like, I respect the history and all that, but I am totally team, let's move the world championship around.
Love it.
Because
we're gonna get people coming at us every time I talk about this. I get so much hate, but it's not. It comes from a place of love, people. It comes from a place of love.
Well, and they weren't there last year to see people like writing on their cars like rude things about Ironman, and people like, we were not welcome there.
No, we weren't, like, really.
We were not welcome.
Really weren't welcome. It was like, I felt it. I really, really felt it. Like it was.
Oh yeah. I was like, how can I make myself not look like a triathlete when I go in public? Like, keep my wrist, take my garment off, put my wristband. Like, I don't know. Like, there's all these. Yeah.
One of the last things I want to touch on, just because it is something that we talked about the specialization earlier, but I do want to talk about the diversification of athletes, because we've seen male triathletes a lot recently, especially with the Norwegian boys doing stuff recently, but we've seen a lot more crossover of, I guess, shorter. Ironman 70.3 is not so big a difference, I think, but we're seeing a lot more of the short course males in the past sort of flirt between short course and 70.3 distance a lot. And with the exception, or until recently, we've not really seen it with the women. I think Taylor Knibb is probably the best triathlete on the planet at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah. But
she really seems to have taken the same approach. Not that she's copying them, but she's taken a very similar approach to racing as the I guess the Norwegian boys, not going as long. But you know, what as a female triathlete, do you like seeing more of those would you like to see more of those short course women step up? What are the thoughts around the next wave of short course? Because we're about to have an Olympics next year, and we always know after an Olympic cycle, people transition. What are your thoughts around that wave of women coming up? And do you want to see more flirt between the two distances?
Yeah, I mean, in one way, it's fun to see short course women come up and see how they do. Because I remember Daytona 2020, everyone was like, oh my gosh, frothing at all these short course people who are going to come kick our butts. And then it's like, okay, yeah, but it's still 80K hard in TT position. And it's not a guarantee. I mean, some women did it wonderfully, and then some women, it was like no problem to just pass them and outrun them even. So I guess it's fun to see, but I think it just comes down to the individual and like what excites them. I think Taylor probably really likes the non-draft long course stuff.
Too.
Like, I think that's probably more her passion, and I don't know if it's the allure of the Olympics. I've never talked to Taylor about this, but I would love to know how she feels about it, like why she wants to do both. But and then this could also come back to, you know, what we were talking about earlier with like the economics of male versus female. Like maybe for some of the women, it's like, well, I don't have a TT bike and I can't afford a TT bike, or my sponsor, I don't have that many bikes in my contract or whatever. Like, I have no idea, but there could also be that element of just like, do I want to invest my time in that, or do I just time and money into trying to do long course, or would I rather just stick to what I'm really passionate about right now? I don't know. I have no idea why it seems that more men do it versus women. It's really interesting to think about, actually.
I also think it's fascinating what you were saying about, because you're right. We actually, now that I sort of unpack what I'm even saying, we have had examples of, like, Flora Duffy raced the Collins Cup last year. We saw Katie Zafiris do the Collins Cup the year before. And I mean, on paper, and I think I've said this for years, I've always said that Katie Zafiris is a long course athlete pretending to do short course.
But she's so good at short course.
She's so good at short course. And that's why I've just been like, when she goes long, she's going to
we're all going to die.
But we haven't seen it. Like, we saw her do that race on that. Again, you could tell it was like maybe the first time she's run a TT bike with that horrible position, but didn't really deliver. Flora's another athlete that on paper, I would assume would do really well, particularly the middle distance.
Yeah.
Hasn't really delivered. Gwen Jorgensen, an athlete, I would love nothing more than to see Gwen try a long course, because I think that she would, you know, the marathon project that she was pursuing, like, I just feel like she would be so fascinating to see. Emma Snowsill, another athlete I would have loved to see. We don't actually tend to see maybe as many women actually commit all the way up to long course. We see plenty come to the 70.3 distance, but maybe maybe it is. I don't know. I'm just sort of thinking out loud that I've said it. But
it's really interesting to think about, because the other thing with women too is, like, if you want to have a family and all of that, like, that you can do both. We're seeing you can do both. Like Katie, Chelsea, there's so many successful women who have come and gone and had children, but like, there's that element as well. It's like, okay, well, they may have a plan. Like, I want to give everything to short course, and then I want to start a family, and then we'll see. And like, there just may be more, you know, hats we're trying to wear.
That's true. It's a really good point.
Yeah, because like all these women you've mentioned, like, well, not all of them, but many of them are mothers as well. So
you're right.
And I can attest to like the hours required to be really good at Ironman, you know? So that's also a factor. Like, having a child and training 33 hours a week, and if you don't have the support network or something like that, like, it could be really tough. So I think it just comes down to, like, as well, what the women enjoy most. And so maybe, I think we assume that like short course people want to go long, but I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of them are like, no, like, they're two different sports, really. Like, they're totally different. So some just may have zero interest. And I think it's been really cool, actually. I've respected the women. I feel like some of the GB women, I don't know their names exactly, but like, they just like straight up retired from triathlon straight out of short course. Like, they're like, no, we're done. I'm done now.
Non-Stanford recently did this, I think.
Yeah, was that it? Yeah. Non-Stanford.
Vicky Holland, I had a conversation with Vicky Holland last year at Sub, because she retired from short course, and obviously I think she's pregnant, or she's about to have a child. But I was like, come on, like, Vicky, are you done? And she's like, don't know yet. We'll see. Yeah.
Right. But then she's having a child, right? And I think I don't have a child yet. And like, I'm sure that is a huge life-changing thing, and you just have no idea. I mean, Katie's been very vocal about that, right? She's like, I didn't know if I'd want to come back or what that would look like for me. And I've just had to like be really open to what that could look like. So that could definitely be part of why we don't see as many women.
Well, the last thing, I guess, the last little bit we want to go through is Kona is coming up this year. You are going there to race. Two things. Who are the people you have marked as the people that you need to watch out for on race day? And after you've answered that, I'm going to follow up with the last thing.
Okay. Well, I don't think anyone that I have marked would be any surprise. I mean, Chelsea Sodaro, obviously defending champion. She's had a bit of a roller coaster year. So I think it'll be really interesting to see, I guess, first of all, how she does in Singapore this weekend. And that might be some indicator, but there's still many weeks until Kona. So it'll be cool to see how she handles being defending champion. Kat Matthews, definitely excited to see her race there, since she wasn't able to make it to the start line last year, sadly. And then I think, honestly, it's just the usual suspects. Daniela Reef.
I'm so curious to see Danny. I really,
I know.
Which Danny's coming? Like, because I feel like
I know, yeah,
if it's Roth Danny, you all have no chance. Sorry. I really, like, genuinely, I feel like if Danny does what she did in Roth, nobody's touching her. Like, nobody's even gonna get close to her.
Yeah. I mean, there's been like,
except for you, obviously, you'll have a run.
I'll be right there on her wheel.
Top
so
Polani,
no
it'll come down to the crest, and we'll see what happens. But
yeah, I mean, I even heard some rumblings at the PTO US Open that Taylor Knibb was thinking about Kona, and I was like, oh my gosh, if she came to Kona, that would be crazy. But the thing about that is,
surely
like,
not this year. Surely not. Olympics are next year. Sure. I mean,
you would think, but
please do it. Like, I'd love to see it.
I know, but the thing about, I think my initial reaction was like, oh gosh, here's like another freaking all-star woman coming to the start line. But at the same time, it's an Ironman in really hot conditions, so it's like,
and we've seen that Christian and Gustav haven't transitioned back the way that I think that they probably expected to. Like, Christian's coming good, but Gustav has had a shocker, and I understand Gustav's had a lot of other things happen, but it's not been the seamless. Like, they stepped up, and this is, you can do all the sides, you can do all the stuff. It seems to be sort of written in stone. It is very easy to transition up, but it is very difficult to go back. And maybe that is just a lesson we're learning now. The last thing I want to ask you, because we're doing really well for time, you said at the start that we like to have, a bit more people calling people like, who are you going to call out? The platform is yours. I want to hear you lay down a challenge. I want to hear you I want you to call out somebody. I'm putting you on the spot. Who is it? Who is it you're going? Whose blood are you after? Who are you going to destroy the next time you race them?
Oh, an athlete. I was just going to call out some random.
No, come on. We need to start a new Skye Moench versus
you're right. The freaking rivalry thing. I need to think about, because there's always, Kat Matthews has beat me every time we've raced, and it pains me because I've been close. I've been closer sometimes than others, but I guess I'll just call out Kat again. She's back doing well. I'm feeling good about where I'm going to be for Kona. So let's call out Kat.
I love it. Can't wait to see it. Well, Skye, look, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. If people want to find more about you, they want to follow you, all those sort of things, if they want to check out your YouTube to make you a YouTube superstar, where do they need to go?
Yeah, well, Instagram's where I'm the most active, at Skye Moench. I do have a YouTube channel, and I'm thinking about doing some more posting there leading into Kona to try and help post or to hype the women's race. So
YouTube Shorts are very good. Did you know that? They're a very effective social media platform at the moment. So there's a little hot tip for you.
The shorts are, you said?
Yeah, YouTube Shorts.
Yeah. I posted a few. Anyway.
Free lesson. There's a little bonus thing for Kona.
Thank you. Instagram's the best right now, because anything else I would pump out would come from, I would promote it on Instagram. So
perfect. I can also say that it's fun to be your Nintendo Switch friend, because I get to see all the games you're playing on Nintendo, mostly Mario Party, and what was the other one? Animal Crossing. There was one you got a lot of hours
Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley,
my other favorite.
What a game!
Yeah,
Stardew Valley. What a game! My wife put like 250 hours into it or something. It's an absolute rip-off.
I think I might be close, but
I do talk to your husband a bit about the games that we play, because we seem to have very similar tastes.
Oh, so, I know. Yeah. You guys should game. You gamer guys.
Well, Skye, thank you so much for joining us. Again, guys, give her a follow, all that sort of stuff. But I'm really looking forward to seeing you racing in Kona. We'll all be cheering for you. So I'll talk to you later.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
And we're back. Jimbo, Skye Moench, the great one.
We are back, mate. I do love this new interview format we've got. I think you get a lot more out of an athlete when you're when it's much more of a conversational approach rather than a question answer. And I love that interview with Skye. I thought it was brilliant, insightful, and like you say, it went on, but none of it was dead air.
I did like that one of the things, because Skye listens to the podcast and she was saying that what she really likes about this new format too is she does interviews and she gets asked the same questions over and over. She said just having an actual conversation meant that there's a lot of things that she's thought about before, but she's never verbalized or said publicly. So it was a good opportunity for her to actually give some opinions. I like that. And again, I like the fact that the podcast is called Talking Triathlon, and that's what we do now. We literally just talk about triathlon with these guests, because genuinely, I think, there's so many professional triathletes in the sport. A lot of people want to know what their training's like and their approach to racing, but I genuinely want to know what they think about the sport. Like they have such interesting perspectives. They're from different countries, different backgrounds, different skill sets, like so many different things, and they're always going to have a different perspective to ourselves. Sometimes there might be an alignment, but yeah, I really genuinely, I've enjoyed so many of the chats we've had already with the new format of the show. So hope you guys are enjoying too. But man, Skye Moench, heading to Kona this year. I really think that she is, again, I know you haven't had the chance to listen yet, but she's very much, sort of starting to identify more as a pure Ironman athlete. And we talked a lot about the specialization. And as I sort of said, I think it's a good thing. I really like to see a bit of specialization in athletes. I love seeing the short course mixing with the middle distance, but I also really love the purists. Like I really think that it's almost like, again, our Americans are not going to love the cricket analogy, but you see the test match players who are purely test match players. And I love that triathlon is starting to have that a bit too. So yeah, great athlete.
Like her bike as well. Big fan of that purple Trek.
New one's coming, mate. She was given a few hints about what the new one is. We actually had a bit of a chat about the bikes, so you'll hear that when you get a chance to listen. But yeah, I would encourage you guys all to go over, give her YouTube channel a subscription, follow her on Instagram. Genuinely, just a great part of the sport of triathlon. So yeah, you can tell we're both huge fans of Skye Moench. Jimbo, if people want to find out other things, if they want to go to Patreon, if they want to do all those bits and pieces, where do they need to go?
Before I do that, just want to say about 20 minutes after we finish recording this, the England women's football team will have beaten the Australian women's football team in the World Cup semi-final. So I just want to say well done to the Lionesses, really.
Oh, okay. We'll see if this ages well or poorly. I'm not sure.
Indeed. But yeah, thanks for listening. If you want to support the show, then go and find us on patreon.com/talking triathlon. If you want to follow Tim, he's at tford14 on Instagram, and I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram. More followers are almost always welcome. Almost always welcome?
Almost.
No, always.
Almost.
Always welcome.
Almost. I'm not sure if there's some people who might, again, I might just go, nah, no thanks. Don't want your follow.
The conversation is always welcome as well. So reach out and say hello. Find us across all social networks at Talking Triathlon on Instagram and at Talk Triathlon on Twitter. If you join the Patreon group, you get access to our monthly bonus episodes like the one we mentioned earlier about the PTO, and you'll get put in the social group, which is swelling rapidly, is it not?
We set it up, didn't I? I will say one of the things...
within that social group, when we do interviews, we'll be putting what those interviews are going to be. We'll put the post out so you can give feedback on what you think we should and shouldn't be talking about with those athletes, and that will filter into the discussions we have.
Absolutely. And I will also say, guys, if you want to, I guess, give your thoughts, what I'm rapidly finding is the best platform to do that is on YouTube. I really like seeing the conversations and the comments people are putting on the YouTube videos. So please head over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, and give us your thoughts around what we discussed. It's something that I'm checking sort of every week and trying to respond to everybody. So yeah, that's great. So thanks, guys. Jimbo, a pleasure. We'll be back next week. Again, it's going to be a bumper episode next week. We're going to get to talk about the PTO US Open. We'll be able to talk about the Olympic test event. We'll be able to start previewing 70.3 Worlds because that's next weekend. Super League is kicking off. Yeah, there's going to be a lot to talk about. So Jimbo, until next week, mate, a pleasure as always. Talk to you later.
Cheerio.